Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. As you probably seen from the title of this video, I'm going to be ranking every Pixar movie from worst to best. Some of you already know that I'm a huge Disney fan, whether it comes to the theme parks, movies, merch, etc. I'm a Disney fan by heart. And since Pixar released another movie not too long ago, I figured might as well rank every Pixar movie that I've seen so far. Now, just a couple things before we get into it. One is that these are just my opinions, so you don't have to agree with me on like my choice of which one's the worst and which one's the best. Also, I'm not going to be including the new Lightyear movie that's supposed to be coming out later this year since I haven't seen it. I may do a separate video or just redo this video once I've seen that movie. And the other last thing is I was going to include Planes, but recently I just found out that it's not Pixar. Even though it's a spin-off of the Cars franchise, it's technically not Pixar. So Planes and Planes Fire and Rescue is not going to be included. Anyways, let's get started. So since we're going to start off with the worst movie, at number 25, I'm putting Cars 2. I felt like this was one of the worst and the most annoying Cars movies that was ever made. Like, it focused on, like, not Lightning McQueen, like, racing in the Grand Prix. Like, it was more focusing on Mater and him being, like, an international spy to, like, foil, like, some evil guy's plan. I don't remember that much of the movie. Like, the last time I saw it, like, I got so bored. I was like ready to fall asleep and change the channel. Like, that's how bad I thought it was. So yeah, Cars 2, worst movie I've ever seen. Definitely deserves a spot on number 25. At number 24, we had the other Cars movie, which was the last one, I'm hoping, Cars 3. Now, this movie I do feel like was as bad as the second Cars movie, but it wasn't that bad as to at least it focused on Lightning McQueen, you know, still racing and everything. Like the whole point, like in the first Cars movie. See, in this movie, Lightning McQueen is now a 7-time Piston Cup winner, but it seems that his streak gets compromised when a new car named Jackson Storm, who is the next generation of advanced technology, and like other rookies that are also advanced technology, start coming in and doing the races and, you know, start replacing a lot of the other older cars that used to be racing. And because of that, a lot of the other old racers either retire or get pushed out. But Lightning McQueen still tries to race in. But after a violent crash, it was like one of his worst seasons. So then after he recovers, he wants to continue racing. But one person or one car named Sterling tells him, like, if you want to be good like Jackson Storm, you want to, you know, get the proper training. And he gets trained by the yellow car, Cruz Ramirez. But obviously Lightning's old school, so he fails to, you know, not adapt to like the modern training, and Sterling just tries to convince him to, you know, retire. But he wants to keep racing and everything. So that's one of the reasons for the third one. And one thing that like bothers me about the third one was more towards the end. See, Cruz always wanted to be a racing car, but never could. And close to the end, when Lightning and Storm were racing, it seemed like Lightning McQueen wasn't going to be able to finish the race. So instead, he has Cruz take his place in the race. And yes, she wins the race, but it was just kind of dumb, honestly. And Lightning McQueen still continues to race, but is now training Cruz since she's now a race car. So that's why I don't like this movie. At number 23, I chose the movie Brave. Now, don't get me wrong, I do like a good, like, strong female protagonist in, like, a movie, but Brave was just one of those movies that, like, for some reason, I got really annoyed with the main character and her mother, and I don't know, it just made me bored throughout the movie. I don't know, maybe I probably would have liked it better if it was just like a regular Disney princess movie and wasn't by Pixar. So, yeah, Brave was not one of my favorite movies. I'm sorry. At number 22, I put The Good Dinosaur. Now, I know a lot of people are saying like, oh, The Good Dinosaur was like one of the worst movies Pixar's ever did. And I can somewhat agree to that. But honestly, it wasn't like that bad of a movie. It's your typical boy and his dog movie, except it's more of like a dinosaur and his little pet who's a human story. I don't know. The story itself was okay. Just the pacing of it was just very slow. The only thing that like got me emotional was the end when, you know, Arlo finds Spot's actual family and he ends up giving Spot up, which, I don't know, I always tear up at that part. But yeah, this movie's not that good. Animation was totally fine, but yeah, to me, I think it deserves to be at number 22. Oh boy. At number 21, Finding Dory. That was a movie. I feel like this really wasn't necessary to make as like a sequel to Finding Nemo. I mean, yeah, we get to see, you know, young Dory and see what happened to her after losing her parents and then her finally getting to reunite with her parents. But honestly, I just felt like it really wasn't necessary to like make this movie at all. I felt it was kind of boring. There were some funny parts, but mostly I was just getting bored. Yeah, not my favorite one. At number 20, I'm putting Monsters University. Now, this movie wasn't bad in like a sense, but I felt like a prequel to the whole Monsters Inc. movie was very unnecessary. I was more looking forward to a Monsters Inc. sequel, you know, finding out what happened to Boo after, you know, Sully finds her door again and then we get to hear her say Kitty again. But no, we end up getting a prequel, which, I mean, it's fine. We get to see how Mike and Sully met and how, you know, them going to college and then trying to be scares and everything like that. But other than that, I felt like this movie was just okay at best, but I personally think we should have gotten a sequel instead of a prequel to Monsters Inc. At number 19, we have the movie Onward. This movie was okay, but honestly, I felt like it wasn't that great in a sense. I mean, yeah, this came out during the pandemic and, you know, some movies during the pandemics weren't that great. And I'm thinking of the movie Scoob. That movie was a little bit disappointing. Now, I'm not gonna get into that at all. But yeah, I don't know. The whole premise of like the two brothers, you know, going on a quest to find the rest of the spell to see their father, like, it's okay, but I felt like the quest kind of like dragged on a bit and it was just a little bit boring in my opinion. Like, I don't know, the movie was like okay at best, but maybe because since it went to streaming instead of like in theaters, it probably maybe would have done better in theaters, but well, thanks to the pandemic, we had to put it on Disney Plus, so there was that. At number 18, I put the movie Soul. Now, Soul, to me, in my opinion, was mid. I felt like it could have done better. Like, it wasn't that bad of a movie, but I don't know. I felt like it was dragging on a little bit too. And the characters were fine, honestly. But we didn't get to see what happened to 22 after she actually, accepts like going down to Earth to be human. Like, I wanted to see actual human of her. One thing that annoyed me the most about this movie was just the ending. Because, yeah, Joe helped restore 22 to normal and returning her badge and escorting her out of the Great Before for her journey to Earth. And before Joe accepts his fate to go into the Great Beyond, he gets a second chance to return to his body on Earth and start, his entire life to enjoy it. Which, honestly, I felt like that just kind of ruined the point of the movie for me. If, like, he would have just, like, accepted his fate and actually went to the Great Beyond, like, to live out his life like that and just be, his life just finished, I probably would have been a little bit more emotional. But no, he ends up going back to Earth and enjoying his entire life again. Which, yeah, it's okay, I guess, but I want a little bit more of emotion. I mean, it was good that we finally get to see a black character in a lead for a Pixar movie, but I don't know. I felt like this movie could have done a little bit better. At number 17, I decided to put Cars. Now, Cars was pretty okay. It's not my favorite Disney Pixar movie, but it's still better than Cars 2 and Cars 3, at least. The story was pretty okay. The characters, I didn't mind them. They were fine. Animation, as usual, pretty okay. But yeah, number 17. For my number 16 choice, I put Finding Nemo. Now, again, this movie wasn't that bad either. Like, it was pretty mid. And I remember seeing it for the first time in theaters. Like, I actually really liked it. And then I got into middle school, and I had one science teacher who was my favorite science teacher there at the middle school. She was obsessed with this movie. Like, every time we would hit like 100% on doing like good in like her class, we would get like a pop party where we would, watch Finding Nemo and have snacks and everything. It was fun, but watching Finding Nemo constantly all the time, and whenever we would get a pop party, it would get annoying. But aside from that, movie wasn't that bad. Story was okay. I felt like the journey of Marlin trying to find his son was okay. I mean, it was taking a little bit long, but still fine. Characters, I didn't mind some of them. Some of them I could have cared less about, but other than that, not a bad movie. Now, for the next few ones, I probably might get a little bit of hate or something on these ones for my choice of like the next top ones. But like I said, it's my opinion. You don't have to agree with me. But for number 15 on my list, I put Luca. Now, don't get me wrong. This movie was pretty decent and I did enjoy it a bit, but I felt like it could have done a little bit more. Again, this was released on Disney Plus. It didn't hit theaters because of the whole pandemic. But I mean, like, it wasn't like that bad. It was a nice, good coming of age story about two best friends and everything. Animation was very beautiful, and I loved the setting of where it takes place in. Characters, I didn't mind either. Only character I probably didn't like that much was the girl and the bad guy and Luca's parents. But other than that, it was a pretty decent movie. Number 14 on my list, Toy Story 4. Again, not a bad movie. It was actually pretty good. Only thing is, I felt like we didn't need to have a fourth Toy Story. The third Toy Story should have just been the last one, and I felt like the third one was the perfect way to end the whole franchise. Toy Story 4, it's okay. I did get annoyed with Bonnie at the fact that she stopped playing with Woody after she promised Andy that she would take care of him. And she went back on that. That was my only tidbit. One thing that I did love about this movie was that we got to see Bo Peep again. And she is one of my favorite toy characters from the whole Toy Story franchise, since we didn't get to see what happened to her in the third one. So I'm kind of glad that we finally got to see her. And the animation's really nice. It's a lot more cleaner and smoother than like the second and first Toy Story movie. And the story is actually really nice. We finally get to see how, it was like the final one with Woody and just kind of like moving on with him. And the characters are pretty good. There were some funny moments where I was actually laughing, especially with two of the newer characters, Bunny and Ducky. Those characters were just too much. I love them so much. For number 13, I decided to put Incredibles 2. Now, this movie, it was actually really, really good. Only thing is that we had to wait like 10 years to get a sequel of The Incredibles, which was long, long overdue. But hey, this was actually a really nice movie. Really decent. We got to see Mrs. Incredible, aka Elastigirl, taking as like the lead role, but also Mr. Incredible taking the lead role as well. I really did like how they did switch the roles for Mr. and Mrs. Incredible, as Mr. Incredible is now staying at home, being a parent and taking care of the kids, and while Mrs. Incredible is out doing the whole crime fighting to help make superheroes, look great again. So that was one bit of the movie that I did like. And I also like the fact that the kids got more kind of like involved at the end, and we got to see and understand Jack's powers a little bit more. I thought the story was really good, and I did like the fact that the animation was a lot smoother and cleaner than what we got from the first one. So yeah, not a bad movie. Number 12 on my list of Pixar movies has to be Wally. Now, Wally, it wasn't bad at all. Like, it was actually pretty good, pretty decent. I mean, it's about like a robot who's left on Earth to, clean the Earth after, humans deserted it and it's left almost like into ruins, and finds like another robot named Eve who's like looking for actual like plant life on Earth so they can bring humans back on Earth again so they can, get the planet to be healthy again. Like, not that bad. It was just a slow pacing, to be honest. The only thing that did scare me was that like we got to see how the humans are, and they're just like fat and lazy and can barely like even get up. It just makes me think like, oh, that could be us in like the next like 30-40 years or something. That's what we're gonna be like if we keep doing what we're doing to the Earth. And just, I don't know, it's just something that like kind of scares me a bit. Other than that, the movie's pretty good. I mean, it does take its time within like the first 30 minutes of the movie, as it kind of is a little bit slow, but other than that, still pretty good. At number 11, I put the movie Up. Now, this movie is actually really cute and it's really good. I did like the fact that it took its time where we got to see Ellie and Carl like growing up and everything, and it was very emotional to see how they wanted to have a baby but Ellie couldn't, and they decided to go to the one location, I believe it was called Paradise Falls, I'm not sure, can't remember, and they were saving up for that. And we see them growing up, but then close to the end, Ellie's not doing well and she ends up dying, which is still sad. And what Carl ends up doing is that he makes his house being able to fly with like a bunch of balloons to fly over to Paradise Falls, where he can live peacefully and have his dream with Ellie, even though Ellie's not around. But he ends up having a stowaway, which is Russell. And at first, I didn't like Russell because I found he was a little bit quite annoying, but he's actually really like an adorable character. And then when they get to the area, Paradise Falls, they meet a bird named Kevin, who's actually a female. And then we get into Doug, who is a dog that can talk. And y'all seen the movie, so I'm not going to get into an explanation about it. But, at the end, Carl and Russell head back home, but Carl leaves his house at Paradise Falls with, his old chair and Ellie's old chair. That way, Ellie's dream could still come true and everything. The story was really good. Animation's really good too. The characters, they were alright. Didn't mind some of them, but pretty good for a Pixar film. And it seems like everybody else loved this movie too. So yeah, pretty good movie. Number 10 on my list, I had to put Ratatouille. This was really good. And honestly, this movie, it actually just made me hungry, and honestly, it made me want to go visit Paris, France. It makes me want to go there, right now. And the whole plot of the movie of a rat wanting to be a cook is just adorable, but also, hilarious at the same time. This movie was really good. And the food that they showed, it was actually pretty good. It made me really, really hungry. I want to try some of the food that Remy made right now. It was that good. Animation's nice, characters are great, the whole storyline is just very touching. Honestly, it was a good movie, and I would have put it on my top higher list, but there are other movies that I kind of enjoyed a little bit more. So number 9 on my list, I put Toy Story 2. Now, don't get me wrong, Toy Story 2 was pretty okay. It was more of how Woody gets kidnapped, and we finally get introduced to Jessie and Bullseye, and we get to learn about Woody and his origin of being part of the Roundup gang and everything like that. And I don't know, to me it was an okay movie. There were a good amount of scenes and parts that made me laugh and everything. But yeah, pretty decent movie still. Animation's okay, almost similar to the first one with the animation style, but a little bit more of a progress. At number 8, we have The Incredibles. Now, this movie was, no pun intended, super. It was a really good movie when this came out, and I think everyone can agree with me, this was one of the greatest superhero movies ever. The whole movie was really good. The whole plot of humans don't want the supers back again because of all of what they've done, and just how normal people are getting hurt while the supers are not taking responsibility or whatever. It's the good storyline and everything. And there was a lot of funny moments and memorable quotes that get stuck in your head. This is one of my favorite ones. And while Incredibles 2 was really good, it still can't beat the original and first one. The first Incredibles would always be the best one, in my opinion. For my number 7 choice, I had to choose the first original Toy Story. Now, this movie is really good. This is probably one of my second favorite Toy Story movies. And the animation at the time is okay. But again, this is Pixar's first movie, so the animation is going to look a little bit weird and rough. But it's still good. Also, very good characters, very well choice of voice actors for each character. And the story was pretty good too. One thing I did like though was that from a fact that I learned about maybe a couple months ago, that originally Woody was supposed to be a jerk in this whole movie, but they kind of toned it down for him, which I'm glad they did. And at number 6, I had to put Toy Story 3. This is by far one of my favorite Toy Story movies. See, Andy's going to college and the toys feel useless because he hasn't played with him in like the longest time. And so since he's getting ready to go to college and he's cleaning out his room, Andy decides to put the toys in a bag so to put them in the attic. And he decides to take Woody with him to college. But his mom accidentally mistakes the bag as like garbage that he was going to throw out. So she was going to throw them outside into the dumpster. And the other toys thought like, oh, he's throwing us away. So they ended up going to a daycare where they can, you know, be played with every day by younger kids. And you already guys seen the movie, so I'm not going to go into whole detail. But at the end, Andy decides to give up his toys, including Woody, to a girl named Bonnie. And that was probably like one of the saddest things ever, and the most saddest ending too. And I felt like this movie should have been the final Toy Story movie of the whole franchise. Like, there wasn't need for a fourth one. I really like how the animation style got a lot better since the previous two Toy Stories. And the whole story of growing up and, you know, having to give up your toys, it was really heartwarming. Not to mention that this movie really played my emotions. So this was by far my favorite Toy Story movie. Of course, for my number 5 Pixar movie, I have to go with Monsters, Inc. It's one of my favorite Monsters, Inc. movies. I like it better than Monsters University, to be honest. Like, this one was by far the funniest Monsters, Inc. movie. The story was good, the characters were funny, we had a lot of funny, favorable quotes. There's a lot that I can think of, but I'm not going to say those quotes because there's just so many, and there's a lot that I like. So I'm not going to get into that. But yeah, definitely one of my favorite Monsters, Inc. movies ever. And at number 4, I chose A Bug's Life. Now, despite the fact that I really hate bugs, this is probably like one of my favorite like bug movies. Aside from Ants. Ants is also good too, but A Bug's Life is definitely like one of my favorite ones. This movie is really good. I like the whole story. I like the characters, especially the villain. The villain's probably like one of my favorite Pixar villain characters. And I also like the setting and how like you got the perspective of a bug. So like you were always like that, like on the lower level, like on the ground, how you see like how a bug's view is. So yeah, definitely like a good movie. At number 3, I put the movie Coco. I honestly don't have that much to say about this movie. It was really good. Like, the music's great, the whole setting is great, the characters are great. I mean, that's all I can give about this movie. It's just really good. That's why I put it at number 3 in my opinion. Now, at number 2, I had to put Inside Out. This movie was by far like one of my favorite movies that came out during that time period. Like, it's that good. If you want a movie that's like gonna literally like rile up your emotions, Inside Out is definitely that movie. The movie was so good. The whole story was good. And the characters in the movie were good too. And the fact that Joy is voiced by one of my favorite actresses, Amy Poehler, like, it sold me. And I definitely like cried during this movie, especially when close to the end when Riley is going through like depression, because coming from someone who does suffer from depression, like, it really hit me far from home. Like, it's that good of a movie. That's why it's number 2. I kind of was going back and forth if Inside Out deserved to be number 1 or number 2, but after watching this other Pixar movie, I decided I had to put it at number 2. Now, before I get into which one's my number 1 favorite Pixar movie, if you guys haven't seen this one that I'm going to talk about, spoilers up ahead. So there's your spoiler warning. If you haven't guessed which one I think is the best Pixar movie, it is definitely Turning Red. Well, at least in my opinion, I think it's the best Pixar movie. This movie was so good and so funny, and I could relate to some of the things that were talked about in this movie, because I had a hard time growing up when I was going through puberty, and among other things that was also kind of talked about in this movie that I don't think I can say on YouTube, so I'm not gonna say it. See, this movie is centered about Maylin Lee, who is very smart and bright and also helps with her mom taking care of the family's temple. And you know, her mom is very strict and overprotective, and she wants Maylin to be just like her. And the thing is that Maylin Lee has, you know, other personal interests along with her best friends who love a fictional boy band called Four Town. And what's funny about this movie is that this movie takes place in 2002, so like there's like a lot of like nostalgic stuff like in this movie that like I just love. Even though I was born in like 1994, but I kind of grew up in like the early 2000s, so I know about like the whole flip phones, boy bands, and Tamagotchis growing up and everything like that. So it kind of hit me a little bit. Now, Mei Lee is able to turn into a giant red panda whenever her emotions like get riled up, whenever like she's like happy, scared, whatever. And this whole turning into a giant red panda came from her ancestors. So it was more like a blessing, but it became an inconvenience throughout the whole family. I'm not going to talk about the whole movie. I'll probably do like a separate video reviewing about this movie, but this movie is just like really, really good. The animation is like amazing because it's like a mixture of like Western, like USA, like cartoons, but also like you get like the feel of like anime, like animation, like Sailor Moon or like Pokemon and everything like that. And the songs in this movie slap. Like the scoring in this movie is like so good. Not to mention some of the songs from the band Four Town are so good. Like, even though this band isn't real, I'm considering myself a Four Townie. Not to mention there's a lot of like funny moments and funny scenes in this movie. Like, I was literally like laughing out loud when I was first watching this movie. Like, there's a scene where close to the end where she is twerking in front of her mom. There's another scene where she is like drawing like her crush Devin in like her notebook, and she makes like the weirdest face. It's just like hilarious. And then there's this scene, which is by far one of my favoriteest scenes ever because it is just so funny and so random. But yeah, Turning Red is definitely my #1 favorite movie now. I love the animation, I love the whole story, I love the music, I love the characters. It's just so good. And I know there's not a lot of people who like this movie, mostly male audiences, because they can't relate to it. And just, I'm not gonna get into that. But anyways, for me, personally, in my opinion, I think this is one of the best Pixar movies ever. Anyways, that's gonna do it for my take of which is the worst and best Pixar movies. Let me know in the comments down below which one's your favorite and which ones do you think was like the worst. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. I had to do it. I'm sorry.